of Africa. The face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Good evening, you are watching Pulse of African News, live from Addis Ababa, the diplomatic hub of Africa. We bring you the top stories from across the continent. I'm Edo Masai, stay tuned. We'll begin with IGAD. The Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, has welcomed Sudan's decision to resume full participation in the regional bloc, describing the move as a strong step toward renewed regional unity and cooperation. IGAD Executive Secretary Dr. Warqaneh Gabayo said Sudan's return reaffirms regional solidarity and a shared commitment to peace, stability, and collaboration across the Horn of Africa. As a founding member state, he noted Sudan's renewed engagement strengthens IGAD's cohesion and enhances its ability to address common priorities. Dr. Warqaneh also expressed appreciation to Djibouti's president and IGAD chairperson, Ismail Omar Guelleh, for his leadership and constructive role in guiding the process, commending his dedication to dialogue and consensus building. The IGAD Secretariat reaffirmed its readiness to work closely with Sudan to support peaceful solutions to ongoing challenges and promote a secure and prosperous future for the Sudanese people in the wider region. The United Kingdom's King Charles III and Queen Camilla have invited President Bola Tinubu to a state visit. The visit, which the Nigerian leader has accepted, will be the first state visit by a Nigerian leader to the UK in 37 years. The BBC reports that state visits are considered a form of soft power diplomacy, using the pomp of royal hospitality to strengthen relations with important international partners. The last Nigerian state visit to the UK took place in 1989, when military ruler General Ibrahim Babangida traveled to meet the late Queen Elizabeth II for a 4-day trip, the BBC reported. Premium Times reports that state visits differ from normal official visits by countries' leaders, with some previous Nigerian presidents having conducted official visits to the UK. Tinubu, who assumed office in 2023, is expected to be accompanied on the state visit by his wife, Remi Tinubu. The UK mission in Nigeria on Sunday posted details of the visit on its official X handle. According to the statement, the president's visit is slated for 18th and 19th March. It added that the historic visit provides an opportunity to further strengthen the enduring partnership between Nigeria and the UK. The British King and Queen will host the Tinubus at Windsor Castle.
The African Union has selected assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063 as the theme of the year for 2026. This focus highlights innovative approaches to improving access to clean water and sanitation, supporting health, agriculture, energy, and climate resilience across the continent. Significant advancements include expanded infrastructure projects, regional cooperation on shared water resources, and commitments to resilient solutions amid environmental pressures.
Agenda 2063 is Africa's vision for the future, and it is already in motion. Trade is expanding, infrastructure is connecting, and integration is accelerating. African leaders will meet on February 14 to 15 to drive this vision forward. And Pulse of Africa has the story. Cleaner cities are creating healthier, safer, and more livable communities in Ethiopia. Every small change makes a big difference.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, highlighted the importance of technical amendments to the Constitution as a vital step in the process to build a true democracy. During his periodic media interview, broadcast Saturday evening on national television and radio channels, the President explained that technical amendments to the Constitution are motivated by the desire to build a true democracy based on sound constitutional and political foundations. He recalled that the 2020 Constitution, which introduced key provisions such as the constitutionalizing of the November 1, 1954 Declaration, the Higher Council for Youth, and the National Civil Society Observatory, is unanimously accepted. However, he noted that flaws and gaps have emerged in the application of certain articles, such as the ambiguity surrounding the midterm renewal of the Council of the Nation Parliament's upper house members. Addressing the parties which linked these technical amendments to a desire to modify presidential term limits, the President of the Republic stated, "We are working with patriotism and sincerity, while these individuals are mercenaries carrying out foreign agendas to destabilize the country." The President of the Republic also touched upon his ongoing dialogue with the political class, emphasizing his tireless efforts to build a strong and stable state that is not tied to the passing of individuals. He further noted that the draft amendment to the law on political parties, initiated at the request of political groups, represents a significant democratic step, stressing that the dialogue with these parties centers on a comprehensive project for society. State Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Ambassador Hadera Abarra, met with India's BRICS Sherpa Sudhakar Dalela in New Delhi on the sidelines of the first BRICS Sherpas meeting. The two officials reviewed progress on implementing the Memorandum of Understanding signed during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visit to Ethiopia and discussed ways to further strengthen cooperation within the BRICS framework, particularly under the India's BRICS chairship in 2026. They also exchanged views on Ethiopia's preparations to host COP32, the country's accession process to the World Trade Organization. Ethiopia and India share a long-standing partnership encompassing trade, investment, and multilateral cooperation. The BRICS Sherpas meetings provide a platform for member countries to coordinate on key initiatives and deepen collaboration. Ethiopia's engagement comes ahead of its hosting of COP32 and ongoing efforts to join the WTO, highlighting its growing role in regional and global affairs. Shifting to business news, Mali has officially launched its 2026 public securities issuance calendar, setting a target of about $2.6 billion to be raised on the WAEMU regional financial market. The plan, announced on February 6, reflects the government's continued reliance on market-based instruments to finance its budget through structured and predictable operations. The annual amount will be raised gradually under a quarterly schedule. The approach is designed to improve visibility for investors and support portfolio planning. Issuances will focus mainly on two instruments: Treasury bills to meet short-term cash needs and Treasury bonds for medium and long-term financing. Operations will be conducted through auctions or, where applicable, public offerings. Yields will depend on market liquidity conditions, instrument maturity, and investor demand at the time of issuance. In 2025, Mali raised $2.15 billion through 34 issuances, underscoring the importance of the regional market and its financing strategy. Most subscriptions came from domestic banks. With a higher target set for 2026, authorities are relying on the regularity of issuances, available banking liquidity, and sustained investor appetite to ensure the program's success. While the natural diamond market remains weak, De Beers has struck a cautious tone for 2026. In an operational report published recently, the Diamond Group, which has major operations in Botswana, said it now expects production of between 21 million and 26 million carats this year, down from a previous forecast of 26 million to 29 million. The revised guidance continues the adjustment of its operating plan following cuts already implemented in 2025. Production guidance for 2026 is revised to 21 up to 26 million carats, 100% basis, previously 26 to 29 million carats, in response to the challenging rough diamond trading conditions. De Beers continues to monitor rough diamond trading conditions in order to align output with prevailing demand, the company said, adding that it would continue to align output with demand. Global demand for natural diamonds has declined sharply in recent years, notably due to growing competition from laboratory-grown stones. De Beers has responded by scaling back production targets. In 2025, it revised its guidance to 20 million to 23 million carats, from an initial 30 million to 33 million. While output reached 21.6 million carats, annual production still fell 12%. In Botswana, where De Beers operates, the Jwaneng and Orapa mines, production dropped 16%. Output in Namibia was down 7% year-on-year. Only South Africa's Venetian mine recorded an increase of 3%, while production in Canada fell 7%. Next up, sport news. Aduana Stars produced one of the standout shocks of the FA Cup round of 16, eliminating giants Asante Kotoko 4-2 on penalties after a gripping goalless draw that stretched through extra time. Defending champions, Kotoko entered the context as favorites and largely controlled proceedings, dictating possession and creating the clearer openings. Their best chance to seize command came early, but Samba O'Neill failed to convert from the penalty spot, a miss that would later loom large. Despite sustained pressure and a flurry of opportunities, the Porcupine Warriors were repeatedly denied by disciplined Aduana defense that refused to crack. Aduana absorbed wave after wave of pressure with remarkable composure, staying compact and organized as the match wore on. Their resilience paid off as the tie drifted into extra time and eventually to penalties, where they held their nerve. Calm finishes contrasted sharply with Kotoko's struggles, sealing a famous 4-2 shootout victory. After the painful exit, Kotoko head coach Abdul Karim Zito called for patience, reminding supporters that the team remains a work in progress. With the FA Cup dream over, Kotoko now turn their full attention to the Ghana Premier League, their only remaining route to silverware this season. For Aduana Stars, the night belonged to belief and bravery. The win sends them into the quarterfinals and keeps alive the dream of a first ever FA Cup triumph, a historic prize now firmly within reach if their defensive skill and growing confidence continue to carry them forward. Finally, the South African Blitzboks claimed a thrilling victory in the final against Fiji, overcoming a late deficit to secure the title. Trailing 12-14 at halftime, the Blitzboks fell behind further in the second half, with Fiji, fresh from beating them in Singapore in pool play, leading by 5 points with 4 minutes remaining. However, South Africa fought back fiercely. Strong defense pinned Fiji in their own half, and Ryan Oosthuizen produced a match-defining moment, powering through 4 defenders to score his second try of the final. Ricardo Duarte slotted the wide conversion to reclaim the lead. Oosthuizen, named player of the final, had earlier opened the scoring after David Britt's intercept and Dillian Led's assist, with Duarte converting for 7-0. Sebastian Job soon added another from a counter-attack, making it 14-0. Fiji responded with 3 unanswered tries to take the lead, but the Blitzboks refused to fold. Earlier in the day, South Africa dominated Australia 28-12 in the semi-final, with Shilton van Wyk scoring the opener. The victory marked a strong response from the Blitzboks against their recent nemesis, Fiji. Now let's check out the latest weather forecast across the continents. That's all for this hour. Next up is our weekly show, POA in Depth. We hope you'll stay and watch. Thank you so much for being with us. Goodbye for now.
The 2025 AU theme on reparations marked a key step in Africa's pursuit of historical justice, strengthening collaboration between the continent and its global diaspora through Director Citizens and Diaspora Directorate (CEDAW). In this interview, Ambassador Anwar Al-Ghawali reflects on the achievements, challenges and lessons of 2025. I'm your host, Gamichi Samandira. Stay tuned. Mr. Al-Ghawali, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm glad to speak to you. Well, let me start with asking you to tell us about your experiences so far, because I can see that you've had 36 years of experience, and this is quite a long time. Can you tell us what you've been doing in these years and how you got here?
Thank you, my dear brother, for this initiative. As you said, I started my career 36 years ago, and I was just saying that coming into the studio is quite nostalgic, because my first job was actually being an anchor at the Egyptian radio, and both the English service and the overseas service. So being in this atmosphere makes us feel young once again. I pursued then my studies for postgraduate studies, became an Egyptian diplomat for a long time, but also always kept an arm in academia and research, including authoring 2 books, and now I'm working on the 3rd book, which hopefully will be completed in a month or so. So always it has been a combination of both academic, research, media and diplomatic work, and now I'm honored to be at the African Union Commission, heading the Citizen and Diaspora Directorate. This is my almost 3.5 tenure at the African Union. I was here in different posts before as advisor to the deputy chairperson. So very happy to be at the seat of the African Union, serving the whole continent.
Thank you, sir. Well, let me begin with, of course, the implementation of the 2025 African Union theme, of course, justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. And how do you explain the most significant achievements of Directors, Citizens and Diaspora Directorate CIDO in this regard?
The theme of the year for 2025 is one that really is close to the hearts of all Africans. It's justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. The heads of states and government, when they met in Addis Ababa in February 2025, they designated this year as the theme of the year on that topic, and as the focal point, AU system-wide focal point, our directorate was honored to be coordinating the work of the Union in that regard. It has been a year. I actually reached Addis Ababa almost half year through in May, mid-May of 2025. So we had to accelerate our work and effort to implement the theme of the year. I can probably summarize 4 main dimensions where we proceeded forward in this regard. One is agenda setting. The African Union as a whole took the initiative to convene a number of important events that set the agenda forward. Of them is the 9th Pan-African Congress that took place in Lomé from 8 to 12 December, the Algiers International Conference on the Crimes of Colonialism, the 1st of December, and a number of other, the launch of the theme of the year through Africa Day on May 2025. All these events set the agenda that it is time for justice for Africans and people of African descent. But also another achievement was institutional development. The heads of states and government, when they met in February in Addis in 2025, they mandated us to create, for the first time ever in African continental diplomacy history, 2 mechanisms that are mandated, that are tasked to work on the implementation of the theme of the year. These are the African Union Committee of Experts on Reparation, we call them OSER, and the African Union Reference Group of Legal Experts on Reparation, we call them OLER. I'm happy to tell you that at the seat of the AU in Addis, from 15 to 17 December, the inception meeting was held. And that's a major step forward in what we call institutional development. They formed working groups, they adopted a framework paper, and maybe something that we say the first time on the news, inshallah next week, in a couple of days, we've been invited by the Ghana government, because the president of Ghana, His Excellency John Mahama, is the champion of AU champion of reparations and justice, and he has invited us for the first time to have a joint bureau between the 2 meetings. So agenda setting, institutional development. I would add the 3rd pillar is diplomatic engagement. The AU has put forward this theme throughout the multilateral diplomacy and even intercontinental diplomacy. The African Union, European Union Summit, 7th Summit, which met in Luanda, Angola from 24 to 27 November for the first time ever, includes a strong paragraph about justice for the crimes of the transatlantic slave trade, for apartheid, for colonialism, and also recognizes the important role that people of African descent have contributed to the relations between AU and EU. Third, the final and maybe 4th track is on maybe resource mobilization and advocacy, and this is something that we are continuing to work on, and happy that we have also started. So 4 main tracks in 1 year, it gives us a solid base.
Of course, this theme appeared, in the year 2025, and we cannot say that, there has been, enough time to see the implementation of this theme yet, because just 1 year is relatively short. It's just like, a blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. We do hope that, in the coming years, it's going to impact, many African countries, both in the continent and beyond. But still, in this 1 year, I do believe that you have brought about, just positive changes which result from the theme. And how do you explain, of course, the impact of this theme in advancing justice, recognition, reparative discourse at continental and global levels?
So indeed, I fully agree with you that 1 year is the blink of an eye, as you mentioned. And that is why the foreign ministers of the African Union, when they met in Malabo, in Equatorial Guinea in July 2025, they recognized that we are working hard, that we have a solid base, that's a base for future work. And that is why they recommended that the theme of the year becomes the theme of the decade. So I'm very happy to also inform our dear audience that there is a recommendation from the ministers that there is a new decade to be launched 2026, where we are, to 2035, on justice for Africans and people of African descent. I really expect the African Union Summit, when it convenes in Addis Ababa next week, in a few days even, to adopt and to endorse that recommendation. Then we will have one whole set of 10 years, a decade, to work on this important topic. We now have the solid base. What we need to do is to rely on that base, build the columns and build the whole building of justice and reparations for Africans. So we are proceeding forward, and as I always say, it is a marathon, but we will walk that marathon, we will run that marathon at sprint speed.
Yes, sir. Let me come to, of course, the role the diaspora community, the African diaspora community, plays in their contribution to initiatives under this theme, the 2025 theme. Well, it is obvious that many countries, generally globally, they benefit a lot from the contributions of their diaspora. You just can take, India, for example, and many other countries globally, benefit from their diaspora because their diaspora contribute a lot. And Africa's diaspora, in terms of their number, we can say they are huge, and they're, of course, we can say again, dispersed, all over the world. And they play a big role, I believe, to realizing the initiatives under the 2025 theme. And how do you explain the role the African diaspora play in this regard?
Thank you for that question, because probably more than any other international or regional organization in the world, the African Union has a unique perspective towards the diaspora outside of the continent. There's no other regional organization which really considers the diaspora as an integral part of the continental and the regional work. You mentioned statistics. The lowest statistics of African diaspora is 200 million. Some take it even to 300 million. This is almost a continent of its own.
Exactly.
And that is really a strength point for Africa. And I'm happy to tell you that there is an executive council, a ministerial decision that recognizes the important role of African diaspora all over the world. We consider at the AU diaspora, these are Africans who are not living on the continent. Because any African living anywhere on the continent is not diaspora, is part of his own homeland. So I'm happy to tell you that in 2025, we had two major achievements for engaging with diaspora. The first in-person summit between Africa and the CARICOM. CARICOM is the Caribbean community. Took place in Addis Ababa on 7th of September 2025. There was an earlier summit that was spearheaded by, very thankfully, by Kenya in 2021. That was during the COVID days. It was hybrid, or at least it was virtual. But the first time they meet in person was here at the seat of the AU on the 7th of September. I consider this a major achievement for the leaders of the two organizations to meet together. And I'm very happy to report to you that in September of 2024, I think it's the 24th of September 2024, the AUC, the African Union Commission, and the CARICOM Secretariat signed a memorandum of understanding on upscaling the engagement with people of African descent. And CIDO, which is the directorate that I have the honor to lead, has been assigned as the focal point of the EU. So as you see, we have had a very ambitious and concrete and specific engagement with a large section of the African diaspora, particularly the CARICOM. But that's not the only one. In September of 2025, on the margin of the General Assembly of the United Nations, the first ever ministerial meeting between the African Union ministers and the CELAC ministers. CELAC is the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. Took place under the leadership of the Vice President of Colombia. And once again, this is going to open up a whole area of engagement between Latin American and Caribbean countries and between who have a large section of African diaspora. In Brazil alone, I think it's about 100 million people. And the Africans on the continent. So as you see, we have a very structured and institutional engagement with international organizations that deal with the diaspora. But that's not the only thing, because we know that there's leading African diaspora in Europe and Asia and elsewhere. CEDAW's new thinking, I would say, or at least revised thinking about diaspora is threefold. One, always we have thought of diaspora as finance capital, right? They always say African diaspora or diaspora bring in more revenue, more income than official development assistance and foreign direct investment combined. That's important. I'm not saying it's unimportant, but it's not the only thing. Our view now of African diaspora is that they are human capital, intellectual capital. Some of the best engineers in the world are Africans. Some of the best doctors are Africans. Some of the best AI specialists are Africans and agriculturists. So what we want to do now is to partner with the different African institutions, for example, with the CDC, the Africa Center for Disease Control, which is based in Addis also, to find out the African health scholars who can help the continent. We will partner with the STRC in Abuja, another African Union office that deals with science and technology, about African scientists, and so on and so forth. So that's human capital or intellectual capital. Third is diplomatic capital. What do we mean by this? Some of the most active parliamentarians in the world are of African origin. Some of the highest officials of the United Nations and other organizations are African. So they can shape the global governance, the global decision making, so that it takes African priorities into consideration. I spoke about this in the Aswan Forum of Sustainable Development and Sustainable Peace in October in Aswan, and it received a very, very good audience, and it was actually at the initiative of Commissioner Ambassador Bankole, the Commissioner for Peace and Security. This is also a new dimension that we're discovering. So African diaspora, expect us to knock on your doors and expect our doors to be open for you.
Sir, of course, as you explained very well, something poked my mind. I mean, it reminds me of, just one thing.
I see a difficult question coming.
Yeah. You remind me of asking you, why is it that, these African diasporas elsewhere are not coming and then contribute, to the continent as they possibly can or as they are expected? And if you ask them why, well, they would say that there are no favorable conditions, to allow them to deliver the services. And in this regard, what is CEDAW doing, or what has been CEDAW doing? I think, and I believe, this is, something, a challenge that needs to be addressed.
See, I knew it was a difficult question coming in. No, but we need to recognize that there are challenges and there are obstacles, but also we need to recognize that there is a potential. So first of all, there are some success stories of how the diaspora of every country is actually helping and contributing to the development of their respective countries, as you mentioned. That is why one new idea also that we want to launch as CEDAW is to have a network, or to have a meeting for all the heads of the diaspora and migrant communities, officials in Africa. Why? So as we exchange experience, we identify lessons learned. Because the African Union does not need to reinvent the wheel. The African Union needs to start from where its member states have already achieved. And one way of doing so is to give that platform for the experts on diaspora engagement all across the member states of the African Union to meet together, to exchange experience, to identify the best practices. But also we are working together with ECOSOC. ECOSOC is the Economic, Social and Cultural Council of the African Union. It's also another very innovative institution, probably not present in any other international organization in the same format, to have and to dedicate 20 seats for representatives of the diaspora at the ECOSOC so that they can find their place and share their experience. And then I would add thirdly is what I was just sharing with you, my dear brother, is the sectoral and thematic approach. Africa is big, is huge. Diaspora is big and huge. So what I was thinking of, instead of starting with a really big and complex and challenging process of bringing diaspora to Africa, let's start, as we said, with health on its own, agriculture on its own, artificial intelligence on its own, sectoral and thematic. It's more specific, it's more concrete, and more achievable.
Thank you, sir. Let me take you to the role of civil society and the lessons you might have learned from, of course, their activities. Civil society organizations have often been at the front of social justice movements, I believe. And what role have they played, with regard to realizing, of course, the initiatives raised in this theme, in the 2025 theme?
Sure. We are very fortunate in our directorate that, yes, we are responsible for engagement with diaspora, but we are also responsible for citizen engagement. It's called actually the citizen and diaspora organizations. We recognize the important role that civil society in the wide definition of the word, not in a narrow one. So, for example, one event that we held in Namibia, in Windhoek, was the African Union Interfaith Forum, the Dialogue Forum, IFDF. And we dedicated it to the theme of justice and reparations for Africans. Because faith-based organizations are so effective, are so impactful in reaching to the citizen. When someone goes to the church and hears the priest, when someone goes to the mosque and hears the imam, this is a way to really get directly to the hearts and to the minds of citizens. So indeed, we have been engaging with faith-based organizations as one example. Labor unions. For example, the African Union is finally now a full member of the G20. Then there is something called the C20. It's the civil society engagement group of the G20. There is the IF20, the interfaith, and so on and so forth. So this is one dimension that we're also exploring, how to really engage with citizens, civil society in the wide definition through faith-based organizations, through NGOs, non-governmental organizations, through faith-based organizations. And I promise that we will be doing more, once again, in cooperation with ECOSOC, because ECOSOC is this policy organ, is this organ of the EU which assembles and integrates representatives of civil society. But I could not agree with you more. We need to do that. And this comes from the perspective of what I call multi-stakeholder diplomacy. Years ago, diplomacy was intergovernmental.
Yes.
It was government A with government B, or government A with even international organization B. Now, diplomacy includes the private sector, includes civil society, includes professional organizations, includes faith-based. It's a multi-stakeholder diplomacy. And I'm very proud that CEDAW is the interface, more or less, of AUC, of the African Commission, with that multi-stakeholder platforms.
Let me come to implementing, of course, the ideal of reparation, which is very complex and very sensitive historically, as we know. Let me ask you the challenges you might have encountered in this process when you tried, of course, to implement, reparations, especially with within the context of this particular 2025 theme.
Indeed. Well, the challenges are quite numerous. First of all, I arrived mid-year, as I was saying, so we had to really accelerate our work and contribution. I'm very happy that in the second half of the year we were able to achieve those at least concrete steps in institutional development and diplomatic engagement and in norm setting and agenda setting. The other challenge is that, of course, this is a very, as you said, sensitive issue. So we have to deal with it in a very mature, in a very wise, in a very diplomatic manner. And that's the way we have engaged with our partners in this regard. The third one maybe was the need for that institutional development through the creation of these mechanisms. But of course, this is also a campaign that we need a lot of resource mobilization because it needs to be effective, it needs to be wide ranging. So we are really also counting on the support of member states, on the support of all stakeholders to provide the human and the financial resources that are necessary in this regard. So the challenges have been numerous, but I think the will is also a strong one to overcome any obstacle that we have before us. And in this, we need to be patient. It's not going to be achieved in a day or two. It will need patience, it will need perseverance, it will need what we call, do we call it in English, long breath, you know. So like you know, Ethiopian runners, they can run for 10,000 meters and still have the stamina. So we need to have the diplomatic stamina to work hard, but also to work on longer periods.
Let me come to diaspora engagement, justice and global partnerships, especially in connection to what the African Union and CEDAW are doing. And do you think in these regards priorities of African Union and CEDAW with regard to this theme, the 2025 theme, will be changed?
Now, as we said, we now have a recommendation to extend it to a decade. I think that recommendation is going to be adopted on 14th or 15th of February in Addis Ababa at the summit. But also, we are choosing the partners with which we can embark together on that journey. One of the main platforms, the main spaces for us, all of us as Africans, is the United Nations. So we are in close contact with the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent to host, for the first time ever, that forum, which includes Africans and African diaspora all over the world, on African soil, inshallah, in 2027. They usually meet in New York as the seat of the UN, or in Geneva as the European seat of the UN. Now, for the first time ever in 2027, I expect them to come to Addis to really mingle with the African continental mechanisms. Also, UNESCO is a particular close partner and stakeholder for us. Why? Because one major part of African call for justice and reparations is the restitution of cultural resources. Many of our artifacts, many of our heritage, much of our identity is in museums all over the world. And it is time for them to be recognized as African heritage, as African cultural property, and for them to come back. So I'm happy to also inform you that most probably on the 13th of February in Addis, at 3 o'clock, will be an important high-level panel with UNESCO on this regard. So we are not alone on this. We are joining hands with the mechanisms, with the platforms that promote justice and order around the world, including, of course, the United Nations. And I always say, this call for justice for Africans, for justice for people of African descent, is actually a call for justice for the world. Because if you have justice to Africans and you redress the injustices, it means that the future world will never, never, never repeat those historical crimes against any other people in the world. So we're also working for justice across the world for all people that deserve it.
Yeah, Ambassador Amir Al-Ghawali, thank you very much for the excellent interview you gave us here, and specifically for coming to our place and devote your precious time. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Looking forward to more encounters.
Thank you, sir.